Hey, this is Skullgirdle, and welcome to Undead Conversations. This episode starring the Kentucky Vampires. Will y'all introduce yourselves and what you do with the band and the making of the music, please?
I'm Abbas Marler. I'm vocals.
Zach Campbell. I pretty much make all of the music. Abbas generally adds some things, and going forward, there's going to be a lot more of that happening. And we also have a new bass player who's going to be recording bass on the new album too. So
Okay, so does that mean that you're planning on, I don't know, maybe touring, playing around further outside of Kentucky? Because you are actually in Kentucky, right?
No.
Oh shit, I thought you were in Louisville.
I'm from Lexington, Kentucky, and Zach is from Louisville, but I guess due to job and contracts and all that fun stuff, we've kind of sort of had to relocate in different parts of the country. I'm actually talking to you from Washington State right now.
Oh.
And so, yeah.
And I'm on the complete opposite in Florida. So
Kentucky Vampires, y'all, are just taking pre-orders for a release of their vinyl, which is what, clear green?
yeah, transparent green.
Yeah, there's not a picture of it. Is it bottle green? Like Drab Majesty just did that Coke bottle kind of greenish color. Is it that color or is it a little darker?
It's going to be like the darker green.
Okay, I've seen that color too. All right, y'all.
Yeah.
So if you collect vinyl, Kentucky Vampires are about to put out vinyl.
Yeah, and this green one is limited to 300 hand-numbered copies. We're not going to do any more green ones after this. If we do a repress, it's going to be black, is what we were discussing. So I really collect it. To me, like, I really like the representation of it as an art piece. The artwork cover, the whole presentation of it. I like it. I do notice when I listen to a vinyl compared to like a digital recording, a CD or whatever, I hear more things. It sounds different to me, and I like the way it sounds, and I like it's cool. It's a cool presentation, and I like that about vinyl. So that's me.
Well, do you think it's closer to live in sound when you're listening to it?
Yeah, I mean maybe because of it has like a certain kind of EQ curve to it. It just sounds different to me, I guess. I mean, I don't know that one's better than the other or anything, but it's a lot of people would argue that it's significantly better quality than a CD or something, or a digital download or whatever.
Well, the art aspect makes the most sense to me because you can get up to a WAV file download from your Bandcamp. So I could get you guys on WAV,
Right.
which is the same thing that you're using to make all your other media. So if you just want to collect it because you want to collect it, that's fine. I see no reason to have to justify.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, to me, the way I think about it is like when like the iBooks were really popular, the Kindle came out, and everyone's like, oh, digital books, and then everyone was like, how I really miss holding a book in my hands. That's kind of how I feel about vinyl to me, but to each their own, I guess.
How did you guys get together? Because you lived in two different towns, but did you know each other offline as well as on?
Yeah, we have a mutual friend who's, I believe, had caught a post Zach had made about looking for a bassist, and that's kind of where I came in the beginning. And so she reached out to me and said, hey, this group's looking for a bassist, are you interested? And gave me his information, and pretty much the rest is history. We met up in Louisville, practiced, I think, literally hours before our first show. We actually got together for an actual band practice, but we meshed well, and that was a pretty successful night. So that's how it kind of all began.
Right on. So was that show a little bit crazy because it was your first practice?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very.
I think that was the craziest show we've ever played. Actually, it was really, really cool. Yeah, it was in a house. Like, I couldn't even guess how big that room was. I mean, a living room, literally, and it was completely full of people, and people were crowd surfing, which was like a really unique thing I've ever seen before in any show I've ever played in, and it was pretty cool. Everyone was really into it, and it was a really cool experience.
Was it actually a private party if it was in a house?
Oh, this place was like they would hold like DIY kind of like punk shows there. I think regularly. I don't really know. I only went a few times, and we did get invited back, but we had to cancel. But I don't think it exists anymore, to my knowledge.
That actually sounds like one time when I was in college, 137 years ago, I went to we'll call it a house party, but it wasn't exactly a house party because the house wasn't habitable. But somehow they got electricity in there. I mean, there was one room where you had to skirt around the edge of the floor because the floor was gone in parts. And I'm in this house party, and there's a ska band playing. It was like 1989, 1990. I forget. It was long ass time ago. And the room was packed. I mean, you were going to know your neighbors. You were being frauderized by literally everybody in the room.
Yeah, so, that's a lot like what that place is, I'm pretty sure. I don't know that it exists anymore. I'm surprised that, as loud as the shows were that we played with the other bands there, I'm surprised the neighbors tolerated it and that the cops weren't there immediately.
Where does the name Kentucky Vampires come from? It seems obvious, but seriously, there might be more thought to it than, oh, we're in Kentucky, let's be vampires.
So I started it and I named it that. I grew up like always into vampires, like always into, especially actual Bram Stoker's Dracula, the book. And I remember being just obsessed with that stuff, like with the Universal Bela Lugosi and all that stuff, and the Hammer, Christopher Lee stuff. And I've always loved it. I'm a huge horror movie fan. And starting this band, I wanted it to be like pure, true death rock. And maybe mixed with some horror punk, because I feel like there's a lot of parallels between the two. Right. And originally we were even talking like, let's make a song about a horror movie, every single song or something. We ended up doing a few and kind of got away from it. But it basically, it is like I was living in Kentucky, and I'm just thinking, trying to think of a name, and it just kind of clicked, and it seemed kind of catchy, and it just stuck with us, and I never changed it.
Well, obviously, we're all excited to be part of a vampire death rock group.
Yeah, this has been a really great experience of being in this band and working with Abbas. It's really probably the best thing I've been involved with musically ever. So I'm really really happy with where the future is going, and what's going on with us. So.
And there has actually been quite a bit of hype, at least on Facebook and on Instagram, about the Kentucky Vampires. Did you think that as quickly, and is that part of signing with Secret Sin, or is that just the right people decided that they really love the Kentucky Vampires?
Yeah, I think it's both. It's especially Secret Sin. I think they're really doing a lot for us for promotion and everything. But we've been kind of gaining momentum. We've been together doing music for 3 years now, I think it's been. And we've kind of been slowly gaining momentum. And sometimes, we would, just get somebody to write a review, or somebody, totally unprovoked things just happen. And it was like, oh, whoa, someone's listening to us here. It's crazy. Because I never really thought it would be like that. But it's really cool. And at Secret Sin Records, David Moyer really is promoting us, and they believe in what we're doing, I think, and that makes the difference. So they even approached David approached us as a fan, so it was pretty cool way to even just start talking with those guys.
So are any of your songs really not about what they sound like they're about?
It's kind of a mixture of you're obviously listening about or listening to words involving horror-like related themes, but there's also kind of a message buried in there at the same time. One of my favorite songs that I worked on, Spider and the Fly, some would probably not realize that it's actually a story about the Queen of Bathory and what happened to her near the end. The message that I was kind of portraying in this song was, look at all these things that were said about her, but possibly in the end, it was a simple matter of a lot of guys just didn't like her. So yeah, if you kind of listen to the songs, you'll kind of hear little hidden stories kind of masked by the some of the horror scenes that you kind of hear directly. So
Right. So let's go back to that. Talking about women at that time, are you meaning how women were treated at that time, automatically assumed to be evil, or can you expand on that just a little bit?
sure. So she was part of a prominent family at that time, and so it, in my mind, in my belief, it doesn't really matter what period of time man has existed in. There were women who came into this world with much to offer, and in some cases, these women were strong, and they spoke their mind, and so a lot of times, especially in those times, guys just didn't care for that. And so, you'll hear stories, it could be Queen of Bathory, you talk about Joan of Arc, they contribute so much, and in the end, someone just did not like what they were doing and set them up for failure. So
Do you think that women have it better now? Oh, loaded question.
that is a loaded question. I think that you see a lot of parallels. You know, I've made the comment in the past that a lot of what you see now, I'm almost willing to bet you saw in the medieval era. But I also believe that there's a great awakening at the same time. Where we're starting to see the kind of power that women have. And what contribution that it has to mankind. And so we're still seeing some that don't like that, but I believe that in the end, women are going to triumph. They just are. I firmly believe that because we are all seeing the truth.
So, do you think that we're in like the last gasp of people trying to hold on to their power before that enlightenment, the age of it? Well, I mean, we know this isn't considered the age of enlightenment, we're the age of technology. But do you think that enlightenment, we're seeing so much obvious and brought to the forefront so that we can actually fix it and move on?
I do believe that. I think some of the sayings out there, like the divine feminine, is starting to, make its way from behind the mountains for all to see and to experience. And so I think that's, a large part of what's happening. There's kind of we're in the middle of that ebb and flow where those energies are now surfacing, and, we're seeing all sorts of changes across the board involving that. And so it's pretty exciting times. There's a lot of empowerment happening, and I think some great things are coming. Some of the subject matter that I write lyrics to, kind of revolve around, the observance of female energy and how it affects people. For example, our song "Daughter of the Morning Star" is actually about a group of witches in Italy known as the Stragan witches.
Mm-hmm.
And Aradia, if you're hearing the lyrics, I say, "Oh, Sister Aradia." Well, she is a witch goddess created by the witches to actually help assist them against the inquisitors of the time, the witch hunters.
Yes.
And so, I've kind of included that kind of subject matter specifically to show, look what's happened and what have not, but at the same time, look at the power behind it at the same time.
Okay, so what it looked like, the lyric in there Because as I was listening to that song, I noticed that I was not listening to English anymore. Is the lyric, the incantation, is that Latin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right. Because I looked at it and I was like, well, that's not Italian. I've read Italian before. That's not Italian. Okay, how come you chose Latin? Because strega is supposed to be of Italian descent. I know that Latin is Italian, but instead of using Italian, do strega usually use Latin these days?
If you go into that time frame and you look at the Catholic Church, you'd be quite surprised how many priests who are thought to be, staunch, dedicated priests were also practitioners of the occult. They just they hid that underneath, in their daily practices, just for the sake of not being persecuted. And so that's kind of why I did that.
Okay, so do you write all of the lyrics?
Yes. I've been tasked with the lyrics pretty much since the beginning. Daughter in the Morning Star, I had written Latin in, and then Spider and the Fly, there's a section in there where I speak Romanian.
Oh, that's cool.
We do have 2 songs on the original album that the lyrics were written by original vocalist, and basically going forward, though, Abbott's is responsible for all vocal lyrics, everything, and I don't have anything to do with that side of it. I'm not as creative as Abbott's for sure. So,
in my opinion, the vocalist, the bass, the keyboards, all of it together are all instruments, and the voice is just another instrument. A lot of people go for that front person who's singing because, of course, we hear words and we relate to them. But if you don't have everything underneath those lyrics to hold them up, then you really don't have very much.
Yeah, and that's also a rather collaborative effort between Abbas and I. Like, I will make a draft and let him listen to it, and he'll be like, hey, change this, or what if we change this chord structure or something that fits better to the way his lyrics or his vocals are going to be. So he's involved in that process to finalize everything too. So,
well, y'all ever fight about it? Y'all ever call each other asshole and start yelling?
No, we've never argued about anything that I know of.
Seriously, it's coming. It's
coming. Maybe
we're gonna have a big fight one day.
I hope not.
So who is more likely to win that fight? I assume you're not going to get into a fist fight. I don't know. You might. There could be drinking involved.
We'd have to travel a long way for that right now, I guess. It wouldn't be worth it by the time we got there.
Well, assuming that you're going to travel the U.S. tour, where are you hoping to play? Where would your dream concert be?
Well, so there's a lot of things in the works right now. And we can't give rather exact details about everything. We're for sure going to be playing in Louisville some more, probably at the end of this year and, of course, next year. We are talking with several bands about doing shows, tours, things like that. So we're looking probably the big thing maybe in January is going to be possibly Michigan, Chicago, Ohio, Baltimore. There's a potential festival in Florida we might be playing, possibly Mexico City in the fall next year. We've had some invites to come out to the West Coast, and we really want to do that. It's just trying to figure out the logistics of everything. So we've got a lot of stuff shaken up for next year, and it's gonna, hopefully we get around and see all the people who listen to us, hopefully. But,
yeah, so you're excited if you get to go to LA. Isn't that Deathrock Motherland?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. Yeah, I would love to play there, and we've got a couple of bands that, we've talked to about possibly joining there and stuff. We've got invites. It's just figuring it all out. Mexico City is a big somewhere I really want to play, because I've gone and I've seen shows there, and the scene is insane. And one of my good friends is in the band Acid Bats, and that was one of my primary inspirations for the music for the first album was that band, and we want to do a show with them, but it's also logistics of getting there and all that stuff too. So
I've heard that in general, the Mexico goth death rock scene is fantastic, but Mexico City in particular is very, very much thriving. So I think that, and that would be a hell of a show. There's too many good bands to play with in Mexico. I mean, seriously, Mexican goth is off the charts. It is.
I mean, I
amazing.
took a lot of inspiration for the first album from a lot of Mexican death rock bands. So, I mean, me and my wife personally, we went to see Cellophane and Los Carniceros del Norte there, and like the turnout to those shows are insane. I mean, they're big bands, but like just the I guess the level of like engagement from people wanting to see bands and coming, and they don't care what language it is. Like they don't even speak the language, or maybe they don't understand anything they're saying, but they're there and they love it, and it's huge engagement. And you don't really see that very often in the United States unless it's a huge band or something. It's kind of
seriously.
We went while she passed away. There was like 400 people there, and it was the most people I've ever seen at a show in the U.S.
I saw Clan of Zymox, and there were maybe 200 people there. It was at a very small club, so I felt really lucky to get to see them in such a small club. I was less than 50 feet away, and we were at the back. And it's amazing to me how small some of these shows are. And if it's local bands, I went to go see my friend in Blood Bells, which is a local death rock band. And there were probably 30 people there, which is a decent turnout for a local band.
I don't know. I just feel like most of the shows I go to is exactly what you're talking about. It's like 50, 60, maybe 100 people.
Well, do you think there's a way to actually get people to go to more of their local shows? Because, if we don't, as an audience, if we don't support this music scene, it will die. That's why Mexico has never really, they don't really have waves as much as the rest of us. They just go hard, and they stayed that way for 40 years. So what do you think will get people to more of the local shows?
Like the city that we were based in, Louisville, when we first started, we were playing in front of like the same 20 people, 30 people every show. It's like the same people. We're doing the same show, and they came to see it, and they support us, and it's awesome. But it started to grow, and now it's a bigger thing going on there. There's more bands there now. There's more community engagement, I guess you could say. And we both of us moved out of there. But I don't know if like college schedules influence that a lot, because the kids and everything coming to shows and things like that. I really don't know how to answer that, I guess. I mean, I think we just do our best to make music that hopefully people like, and we like it, and that's the main point. And if people react to it in a way they want to come see the show, that's awesome. But I guess everybody would like to know the answer to that. There used to be two big clubs, like an all ages one and then a 21 older. And I started going to the all ages one when I wasn't 21. And that's like one of the reasons why I moved to Louisville. I actually grew up in Indiana, which is not very far from Louisville. I ended up moving away for college, and I came back, and then like the whole scene had collapsed or something. Like there was nothing going on. Every now and then they'd have a little event or something, or bring a band in, and like there would be a good turnout for it, but they never could sustain like a weekly, monthly night or anything like that. And then I think that's changing there now. It seems like that there's some interest there, and things are happening there now. And it is kind of interesting because we were 3 years doing shows, and now stuff's kind of getting bigger there. So hopefully with us being far away and playing there seldomly, I guess, throughout the year, maybe that makes things special for us, I guess, like to go back and feel like we're coming back, to where we started, I guess, and doing a show there. So
our musicians in the goth world and the death rock world are much more accessible. So do you hang out with your audience after you play?
Yeah, absolutely. So like the way I look at it is, I make music that I like. Me and Abbas make music that we both like together. I want to stand out in the audience and watch the bands we're playing with to support them, just like they're going to support us. I don't feel like I'm anyone. I'm just me. And to hear anyone come up to you and say, hey, your music is, done this for me, or I really liked it, or oh, I love the sound of this. That's awesome. I feel like I try to be extremely humble about it. Like I don't want to, I don't feel like I'm anyone. I just make music because I like to make music, and we play shows because we like to play shows, and whatever happens, happens.
With the musicians that I've spoken to, the goth genre musicians, that is the theme. That's the norm. Most of y'all have to have a regular job because shows are small, they're infrequent, and not everybody's going to be the Mission or the fucking Cure or something like that. I mean, seriously, you got to play because you love it. And because of that, you're so accessible to us as fans. I'm going to do this in every single interview and encourage people to walk up and say, even if it's just good show, that was a great set that you just did, or I really like this song, or whatever. I just wanted to talk to you and see what you're doing and just give you that kind of feedback, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you're so accessible, and that is unique to small subculture music. So I try to encourage people to actually talk to musicians afterward, because you get shy, and sometimes we feel, because we admire what you're doing. I'm listening to this album. You made this thing. I mean, you made this great thing that I can hold and listen to and enjoy many, many times. And there's always something new when you're listening to music, if you're really listening to your music. And so I think that we tend to think that y'all are much more famous than you are.
I started Kentucky Vampires because I really loved that second Deathrock revival thing that happened, and I loved the Central American, South American Deathrock scene, and I read something that says if your scene is dead, then do something about it, and that's really something that I thought about a lot when I was really starting this whole thing up, because we were playing in Louisville, and I think we were the only goth band there for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. There was some there was a couple dark wave things in surrounding areas, and some stuff that was like goth. Not to be a purist, but I wanted it to be that because I like it, and that's really why it ended up that way. I feel like if somebody wants to come up and talk to us, that's awesome, and I feel like I will take my time to say anything to anyone. I really don't feel like I'm anyone. So we had someone ask for an autograph on one of our albums, and it was just whoa, why? Why do you want that?
I was talking to some friends not long ago about goth. I'm going to call it hybridization. We have death rock, post-punk, gothic rock, dark wave, ethereal wave, and cold wave are kind of the accepted. And if you research,
so on and so on and so.
How do you feel about some of that cross genre between those six, like a dark wave band that has a post-punk guitar in it?
I think it's kind of a good thing because, I think that people look for elements of things that they relate to, or that they just simply like in different songs or even genres. And so I think, when people have that moment of, oh, wow, I kind of really like that or something, it's probably because, they're hearing some element that they can kind of attach to, which then kind of drives them to want to hear more from that group, finding, to their surprise that it's not, say, a genre that they typically listen to, but they now appreciate it because, they're hearing elements from other genres that they like in the music. And I'm kind of noticing that myself, if you do enough research on YouTube or whatever, you're hearing newer generations coming out with music that is kind of a little bit of a mixation of things that they grew up listening to. And so I think that's kind of, in some shape or form, how music tends to survive. It's it's a coupling or a mixation of things. It's a new thing, but it contains elements of the past. So
yeah, and then you can look anywhere now. Dark wave is really the popular thing now, and I kind of think that too, because being a goth rock band or a death rock band and playing shows, you don't get the crowd that the clubs playing EBM gets, and the crossover between having a dark wave band, it's a logical thing to draw the crowd out. It's something that people can hold on to, I guess. I like it a lot. Me personally, as a musician, with this band at least, we started something, and I really don't want to deviate too far from it, because it's we've made a sound, and I while it's the death rock sound and a lot of bands sound like that, I think it's our sound. And our next album has some more, I would say, more trad kind of goth rock stuff on it. it definitely has our element to it, but it's there's a little more rock feel, like a goth rock feel to it, and I kind of want to stay true to what we've done essentially. And we've had a couple of conversations about it, and you know, this is the stuff that we like to make, so we're just staying true to that, basically, I guess, really.
You guys definitely have a sound, and I think it's a pretty distinctive sound. You know, sometimes when you're in a genre, people are like, "Oh, goth music is so limiting," except it's not. As long as you have some of these elements in there, you're kind of within the genre that you're looking for. But I think that some of those hybridized goth genre, staying within the goth genre, might wind up having a genre name in a few years. Building on that, how do you feel about bands that are capitalizing on goth, but have kind of, we'll call them pop vocals? That they don't have the specific guitars of Deathrock, post-punk, or gothic rock. They don't have the specific dark wave kind of descending scale type of things that define goth music. One specifically that makes me crazy is Pale Waves. Have you ever heard them?
Yes.
So how do you feel about bands like that? Do you feel it like helps people find goth, or do you think it detracts from goth?
I hope nobody is like trying to capitalize on things that people have worked, 30, 40 years to build, to make music, just to sell to us. That sucks. If you're doing it because you love it, awesome. If that's true music to you, awesome. Great. More the better. I like to listen to new bands all the time. I like to hear and find new music all the time. But I really hope nobody's out there just intentionally trying to capitalize on things that people have really put their heart into for years and years and years, and they're just out there taking advantage of our wallets. And I don't know that. I'm definitely not saying that band that you're talking about is doing that, but sometimes I feel like some bands out there are doing something like that. For us, we get told a lot that we sound kind of like the 90s second wave of goth music. Like when goth knew it was goth is essentially how some people have said it. And I like that because it's that's something that I think about when you hear these bands that are like, oh, we're post-punk. It's like, well, you're goth rock, I mean, just say the word, say goth, why is it a bad word, And there's a lot of that out there now. If you don't want to call yourself goth, fine. It's kind of like the whole Andrew Eldritch thing, to me, I don't know. I think it's kind of funny, but, I really hope there aren't bands out there just trying to capitalize on things that have been built, that have, such rich history and extreme legacy behind. Right. That would really be terrible.
Right. Well,
they're probably
just having talked to some older, or you could say elder goths, and some more old school goth musicians, they're much more comfortable calling themselves goth now than they probably were in the 90s or in the 80s. But then there's people who go a little too far with it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, okay, so back to Pale Waves is just an example. There are, nothing about that band at all. They're just an example of a band that does this. Do you feel that it's the influence of goth on the mainstream, that they're not trying to capitalize on goth? I don't know that band is trying to do that. But that the influence, goth is popular in the mainstream right now.
I don't know. I mean, the world has become a very bleak place, too, so I think that's a lot of influence on modern music.
Yes.
Maybe Alice has a better answer than I do.
Could be a newer generational thing. It's something that they can kind of latch onto, maybe even kind of feel, a part of. Yeah, I don't know. It's...
But
I feel like the goth scene is a really inclusive scene too, for the most part. So we're really accepting of bringing in new stuff like that too. So that's something else.
But what if they don't like the music? What if they're just saying, "I'm so goth because it's a feeling," or "I'm goth because I wear this black dress and little boots"?
I see a lot of that argument on Facebook, I think, in some of these Facebook groups, and it gets quite heated in some cases, and people are kicking people off their friends list over it. But I don't know, it's, in my mind, it's however which way goth helps them to relate to their world, wherever, or however they're living at the moment. You know, I know that there's some out there that will blatantly tell you you are simply not goth if you are not listening to this cadre of bands. You're not dressing or even putting makeup on. You know, I've seen the arguments everywhere, but in my mind, it's you know, how you relate to it, you know, and how it makes you feel, and that's, if that's, you know, what you want to do, that's what you do.
Well, do you think it's a musically based subculture?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in a purest form, yes. You know, like a lot of people say, well, you're not goth unless you listen to this music and stuff like that. And I don't really like to feel like, I don't know, like there's gatekeepers to something. Like if you want to be something, then be something. But if you like the music, you like the music. If you don't like it, you don't like it. I don't know. I mean, when I make the music for this band, I want it to be goth rock or death rock or gothic music, and I make it that way based on what I perceive what is goth music. You know, I don't know. I mean, we've had people at our shows that come up to us and like, there's no way that that person is into what we're doing. Like, just because we play in bars, there's the regular bar people, and they'll come back, oh, this is great. And it's kind of shocking to me. But I don't know. I don't want to ever be the person to tell someone they can't do something because they want to. But to me, the whole history of goth comes out of music. It's based on music, and it's based on fashion. You know, I think it's more of it's an aesthetic to the music. I guess you know, you have gothic literature that's way older than gothic music too. But I feel like the music is sort of like a culmination of all of that. I really don't know how to answer that, I guess. I mean, I'm not the authority on what is and what isn't.
Right. Well, no, I'm just asking because I like to ask people what they think about that. Because to me, I'm like, yes, it's a musically based subculture, and you can call yourself whatever you want. You can label yourself whatever you want, but that doesn't mean the people that built that subculture are going to accept you as one of them.
Sure.
So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, if you feel this way, I can't tell you how to feel, but I don't have to accept you on that equal standing with all the time and effort put into the subculture because you say so. That's like saying I'm a doctor because I say so.
Yeah, right. Sure.
It's one of those things, and people fight about it all the time on Facebook, and they get crazy. And I'm like, well, why is it? The thing that to me, I was like, why is it so important for you to use the label of being goth? I mean, why is it that you want that label? You're not hanging out with goths. You're not doing goth stuff. Why does it matter?
There's one thing that I see, like kind of like I see what you're talking about all the time in those groups and stuff, and there's one thing that I see that absolutely just disgusts me to the core is, oh, you can't be goth because your skin is dark. Like, that is complete nonsense, and I see it a lot.
Stupid, and it's a lie. There have always been people with darker skin in the goth scene. I'm like, who fucking came up with that?
It's just it's like completely the wrong thing to say to anyone, and anyone who says that is just dead to me immediately. Yeah, and what's funny, like, to mention Marilyn Manson, I remember reading his autobiography when I was like 16 or something, and even in his book, he basically says he's capitalizing on the goth look. He's talking about it in his biography, how I saw these guys and they were goth and I liked how they look, and basically just started doing it because they were doing it. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of people you meet, like these angsty kids, are into Marilyn Manson because it's such shock and angst and all this stuff, and it's like, it's just interesting that people claim that that's goth music when he straight up in his biography basically said he was doing that for an image.
Right. Well, he's fucking brilliant though, because he made it work for 30 years now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If you had one thing you could say to your fans, one advice, whatever you want to say, what would it be?
Thank you so much for listening to us and just taking interest in what we're doing. That's all I could say.
Yeah, thank you from near and far. You guys are incredible. I mean, we have a fan in Sweden, Greece, if I'm correct. It just shows that our music is appreciated from different walks of life, and so that's an incredible thing. So thank you.
a lot of the pre-orders have been coming from like Germany, and I talked yesterday to a guy from Ireland, and I know several people in Mexico, and just other bands I've talked to that dig us too, and like bands that I'm fans of. I'm like, oh wow, you like our stuff? That's cool. But yeah, I think we're definitely have a presence that's growing in a lot of places that isn't the United States, and I guess that's really kind of to be expected. Really, I mean, the scenes in other countries are bigger than they are here. The first song Bitten, when I wrote it, I never thought like it would be what it is now. So
keep chugging, because the U.S. is starting to catch up. We're starting to catch up.
Yeah.
We've got goth festivals happening all over the place.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm going to 2 this year, one in Austin and one in Tampa. So
San Muerta?
I'm going to San La Muerta, but it's pretty exciting with Pink Turns Blue and 1919 being the headliners. That's a big fucking deal down in Austin.
Ensemble are awesome, so we're in talks with them to do shows with them next year, so hopefully we'll do several.
That's right. Yeah, Brandon has been out there promoting you guys too. So he's Sansambra's doing actually quite well. Put out the second album, which is sounding great. And so Brandon's like, well, come on, meet the Kentucky Vampires. These guys are friends of mine. So he just spreads it far and wide. He's like, hey, these guys are my friends. Go listen to them. And actually, that's working. And it's really cool. It kind of says something about you that you have friends that are like, hey, check these guys out too. That the tiniest bit of success that they have, they want to share with you as well. So that speaks well.
Yeah. So Brandon and I have talked about that too. I know, like, we're all about supporting the scene and supporting the band. So like that's another key part of that too. He and I both have had conversations about that, and I think we both are really on the same page with that. Is if you want this style of music to survive, we have to support each other.
Yeah.
He's really just wants to share the scene, the whole thing.
Yeah.
He's like,
definitely.
This is what we got out there. Let's do it. So that's good. That's probably a good hookup for y'all. And that will be a kick-ass tour if that happens. But of course, until it's signed, until you have gigs and stuff, that's when you start posting it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
So once again, this is Zach and Abbas of the Kentucky Vampires, available on Secret Sin Records. Remember, they have that fancy green album coming out. So thank you so much for taking the time out on a Sunday even to talk to me and to, let's further the goth world and make it bigger and stronger.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us, for sure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, guys. So hey, thanks for watching. Until next time.